Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, before I start our discussion about the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine, I want to say thank you for all the comments that were left in the comment section about the last video I published, Vox Populi. Appreciate the feedback. Definitely looking and trying to respond in some way to at least every comment. Is it a like or is it an actual comment? Attempting to do so. Again, appreciate it. Feedback. Now, circling back to what we're observing now in this continued war. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency has now stated that it believes that the Ukrainian military will in all probability collapse by the end of the year if a new arms package is not sent to the Ukrainians. Now, it's just not weapon systems. The Ukrainian government, the regime of Zelensky, and I have to call it a regime now. Obviously, they have canceled elections. Elections have been terminated. There were elections in Russia. There were no elections in the Ukraine. Again, Zelensky canceled those elections. No more elections in Ukraine. The beacon of Western democracy that is under attack. Just a side note. Now, in regard to the aid by the United States to the Ukrainians, let's say that this weapons package is delivered. And not only the weapons package, but the $40 billion in needed cash infusion by the Ukrainian government that is needed to keep the Ukrainian government up and running, paying the government employees, paying the military, what have you, helping the economy along. That's in shambles. Even if that $60 billion is released and new weapon systems start to flow into the Ukraine, it is not going to matter. It is not going to matter. It is believed that the Russians have approximately 3+ years of high-intensity war preparation that has been made, and the Russians are prepared to fight a high-intensity war for another 3 years. Think about that for a second. If you believe that it was this difficult to get a weapons deal to the Ukrainians now, what is the next one going to look like? And the next one after that? How difficult is that going to be for the U.S. government to say, hey, we're going to continue this unbridled inflow of U.S. money and weapons to the Ukrainians? Now, what's even more disconcerting for people here in the United States, Lahaina, the island of Maui. Lahaina burned down. Gone. Not one building has been reconstructed. Not one. Not one. And the United States is going to continue providing billions and billions of dollars to the Ukrainians while this town was completely destroyed. I spent 2 days here in this town. Went to the whalers prison, went to the dock area, had lunch. Beautiful little town. Beautiful town. All gone, destroyed. Nothing has been rebuilt. Not one structure. $60 billion to the Ukrainians. For what purpose? You have to ask that. What is the end game? If we're going to give $60 billion, and then again, in all probability, in another 6 months, the Ukrainians are going to need or want more money and more weapons. So how long is the United States going to provide these weapon systems and this money to keep the Ukrainian government going? Are we going to do this for 3 years of high-intensity war? And that's not to say that there will need to be an increase. That $60 billion is going to have to turn into $120 billion at some point because the Russian military industrial capacity is continuing to grow. The Russians are going to, instead of striking 100 aim points per day with glide bombs, eventually we're going to see 150 to 200 aim points being struck per day with Russian glide bombs. So how long? Are we, the United States, simply trying to forestall the inevitable? Has the event horizon already been reached by the Ukrainian state? I would say probably. If you look at what is happening along the front lines, and again, we have not seen a general Russian offensive, the anticipated offensive that we could see in the late summer start to occur yet. The Russians are very much content upon continued glide bomb strikes against frontline targets and wearing down and depleting the Ukrainian war machine to where it just gives up. Now, the U.S. may be able to provide weapon systems, javelins, in-laws, Patriots, what have you. But it's going to be very difficult for the Ukrainians to stop these GLONASS guided glide bombs. Very difficult. And again, as we speak, the Russians are preparing to fight this kind of war for years, at least 3+ years right now. The Kremlin is contingency planning to fight another 3.5 years, if needed. That means the Russians have made the decision to fight this war until victory. They firmly believe, the Russians, firmly believe that they can outlast the wherewithal of the West to support the Ukrainians. And given the support that is coming from China, Iran, North Korea, there is no reason that the Russians cannot continue this conflict in perpetuity. There's talk about the Russians taking large numbers of casualties. Look, it is highly likely right now that the Ukrainians are taking as many or more casualties in this ongoing conflict. There's been talk about the Russian casualties that are taking place in the assaults on Chasiv Yar, this fortified area that the Ukrainians continue to hold. But look, at the end of the day, it's no different than what is going to happen or has happened in Bakhmut, in Avdiivka. Avdiivka was arguably the most fortified area that the Ukrainians controlled. And it fell. It's on complete control of the Russians now, and the Russians have moved well past Avdiivka and are looking to continue to prosecute offensive operations west of Avdiivka. It's happening. But again, as we speak, the Russians are completely content to use this guided glide bomb strategy until they've decimated the Ukrainian military. And some would argue that has already happened. That has already happened. So at this point, the Ukrainians may get another influx of weapons. It may happen. But rest assured, they will need another influx of weapons. Absolutely. So the question is that going to happen? Is the next influx of weapon systems going to occur? It's hard to say. But I can promise you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the West will tire of this war well before the Russians tire of this war. The Russians absolutely believe that they have to win this war. And I think their war games, their war aims, and their war goals have changed within the last 60 days. Now, what that's going to look like, I think those war aims and those war goals are now more aggressive, probably much more aggressive than the start of the conflict. And you can see that taking shape in the way the Russians are building up their military-industrial capacity and the size of their military. So we'll have more coming very, very soon. Again, thank you for joining us today. More to come. As always, have a good day.